Hello, and welcome to the second series of Super Connected Conversations. The first series was the beginning of what has become a long, ongoing project for me to explore the relationship between humanity and technology. In this second series, I'm delving deeper to try to understand how that is changing our lives, our behavior, and how it's affecting our mental health. But who better to begin the second series than Gerd Leonhard? Gerd Leonhard is an author, a public speaker, a futurist, and someone who specializes in the debate between humanity and technology. He's really expanded my view in this conversation that you're about to hear. So I hope you find it as interesting and as inspiring as I did. Welcome to Super Connected Conversations.
Feelings coming through your fingertips. Don't slide for more. Don't slide for more.
Hi, Gerd. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me for this, for this series where I'm talking to as many learned people as I can about connection and humanity in the digital space. Where are you actually?
I'm in Zurich in my physical space here in my new streaming studio, and Switzerland, of course.
And have you been in Zurich for the whole of the pandemic period, all the lockdowns and everything?
Well, I used to live in America for a long time. Then I moved back here to Basel, Switzerland, and then to Zurich. And the whole year, basically, I have not been out on an actual speaking gig since February 22nd in Dubai last year.
Wow.
So, I've done one or two here in Switzerland, but basically it's been completely, pivoting to virtual. And, I now kind of jokingly, I call this keynote television. So I've gone from the keynoting on the stage, which is something we have in common, right? The stage, to doing it virtually.
Yeah. Now, this is what's exciting for me is that obviously I found out about you through the sort of futurist side of your work. But then you told me the other day that your background is music too, which is great because I really am exploring the value of sound, I think, in the digital space more than anything else at the moment. So I just to get a quick idea of your thoughts about, just for our listeners and viewers, I saw the words humanity and technology in one of your posts, I think on Twitter, and they leapt out at me immediately because those are the two subjects and how they go together, if they go together, should they go together, is what I thought, I must talk to Gert if possible. Just as an introduction, what's your feeling about where we are with humanity and technology?
Yeah, of course, this is really the main topic of my work, right, is humanity and technology. My last book was Technology versus Humanity 4 years ago, and it's still very, very much screaming and popular and now out in like 12 languages. So I've looked at this topic in great detail, and basically the last couple of years it has even been more amplified what the challenge is and also what the good thing is, right? Basically, technology has the power to fix almost every logical, scientific, and practical problems, in our lives, basically. So that goes all the way from energy to food, to medical, to even cancer down the road, right? Technology and science hold the keys for this, and this has been happening very heavily in the last 5 years, so-called digital transformation, right? And so we're saving a lot of money, we're getting faster, music is in the cloud, films are in the cloud, money is in the cloud, right? But the drawback is that technology has become so powerful that in many ways we are getting lost in like too much of a good thing, right? So technology is now being used to manipulate us. The very same technology that was used to connect us, social media, it's now being used to manipulate us. That's kind of like saying you have a nuclear machine a nuclear apparatus that can heat a city with a nuclear power plant, or you can make a bomb. And so technology has this inherent problem. When it gets really powerful, we have to control it, we have to make rules, and we have to find balances. And that is the moment that we're in right now.
And balances and regulation and all those healthy ways to, guide us through this this period.
Well, keep in mind, we're only at the beginning of this curve. Right now, if you think that technology is powerful, you ain't seen nothing yet, as the song goes, right? 5G networks, quantum computing, basically unlimited cloud space, cheap devices. In 10 years, there's going to be almost 9 billion people on the internet at 5G speed, right? And we're talking like, on a scale of 1 to 100, we're like at 2 or at 4. So, that is also very hopeful for solving problems. But on the other hand, if we're already having issues with people feeling dehumanized or disconnected from others because they fall in love with the screen, or they think that, having a marriage with a robot would be more practical than having a real person. If we already have these discussions now, wait until 10 years from now.
Do you feel that it's happening too quickly? Do you feel that, let me put it another way, the rise in mental health problems, certainly in this country, I know a lot about, because I know many people working in that sector. Do you think that's got anything or something or a lot to do with technology and its acceleration, especially in the year of the pandemic? Everything's really gone online, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think Marshall McLuhan once, the famous philosopher and media theorist, once said that whenever we use technology as an extension of man, we also amputate something, right? So as soon as we start using technology like the mobile phone or television, of course, then something else gets lost, right? And sometimes we're losing too many things because we're moving too quickly. But on the other hand, in terms of moving quickly, technology follows Moore's law, the law of networks, Metcalfe's law, and many other laws, which basically means exponential leaps. Right? And when you're talking exponential, the first couple of steps of the curve, you don't notice anything because you're doubling 0.01 is 0.02, 0.04 is nothing, right? But when you get to 4, 8, 16, these are fundamental leaps at the knee of the curve. And we're now at the knee of the curve. We're taken off, and even with the COVID crisis accelerated, taken off at a totally unprecedented speed. So in terms of being too much, you have seen nothing yet, again. Because basically the next 10 years will make us leap about 300 or 400x from today. So uploading your brain to the internet, as Elon Musk is suggesting with the Neuralink, that will not be impossible. The question is, do we want it? That is the real question.
And the reason for me doing these shows, as I told you, it's about a really long-term project I've been working on for many years, which is a musical project in for the most part, and film. But to me, it feels, this is just a very personal feeling about it all, is that it becomes harder for me to connect in the way I like connecting to other people, strangers a lot as well, as you know, because you've been a musician and performing. Particularly in the last year, it's been hard because we're so much connected in the digital space. But I do worry sometimes that it's just going to go on and on like that until we're spending less real, together time and stuff like that. Do you have those worries, or do you think that we'll find a way all the way round again and go full circle in some way?
Well, I'm worried about that, but it's a little bit like worrying that if you invent the fire, then somebody could burn themselves with it, And the argument for not inventing the fire, of course, is kind of moot, And basically what is happening, we're inventing everything around us in such a way that we can become like semi-gods, becoming like God, right? And I think it was a famous quote from E.O. Wilson that once said, the problem of humanity really is that we have Paleolithic emotions, we have medieval institutions, and the technology of gods. And that's really the problem. The problem is not the technology. The problem is because we're
Who was
inventing the
that?
technology. Right?
Who was that said that? Sorry.
E.O. Wilson, it's a famous author from like, I don't know, 50 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Right?
It's just really funny. I've interviewed a Buddhist monk in Thailand for this series, and he said the same thing to me.
Yeah, this is actually it's a very a Buddhist way of looking at the world. But, essentially, I think that technology is such a gift to us. Imagine if we can defeat cancer, or
Oh,
if we
yeah.
can solve the water problem, or so should we not defeat cancer because, maybe somebody would use the same technology to build a super soldier? Yeah, that's probably not a very good argument. And nevertheless, we can't go back, So what we need to do is to say, well, we're going to solve cancer using this technology, but we're going to tightly regulate what else can be done.
Yeah.
And we're going to have agreements like we have with nuclear weapons. Yeah? And that's really what it comes down to.
Out of interest, are there a lot of sort of regulation organization? I don't know. So it's a genuine question. Are there many companies or organizations globally that are in charge of this kind of regulation?
Well, it's not all just regulation, but I'll answer the question in a second. But, many things in our lives are not regulated by law. They're subject to social contracts. Like, for example, the enormous power of alcohol or other drugs, it is okay that in the evening you may drink a beer too much or so, but you don't drink a bottle of brandy before you show up at work, And that's not regulated. You can, you can buy brandy at 7 a.m. if you want to. But those are social contracts. And then we have sort of regulation that's not necessarily a law, like it's just not cool to do, And then we have regulation that is laws or sort of guidelines, like financial regulations and stuff. But the thing about regulation is we have many bodies who do this. For example, the European Commission is now regulating privacy laws and data protection. And regulation is everywhere in banking, in oil and gas, and and the thing is with technology we don't have regulation. For example, what Facebook is doing with our data is flat out criminal in my view, even though not legally criminal, but ethically criminal. That's why I left Facebook, doing stuff on Facebook or for Facebook as a speaker.
I think you cut out a little bit then. Say that again. It's okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
I just cut out for a sec.
If you take the example of Facebook, Facebook is a great example for how technology can initially be great and then all of a sudden it's no longer because it's too powerful. Right? And Facebook has become unethical. So I stopped using it. I stopped speaking for them 3 years ago, and I find them to be a menace to democracy, and also not to say that they don't have benefits, they do. But this is the clear issue, right? When something becomes really powerful, we have to find a way to either socially or otherwise regulate it.
Yeah. Facebook, in terms of its effect on our behavior, our human behavior, is the starting point for my journey through all of this. Because of my own behavior, several years ago, I really struggled and got into difficult places with it. Still do occasionally, but not like then. What do you? It's clear that they don't. The people that run Facebook don't have a sort of. They're not trying to do something terrible to lots of people, but it feels like they have, and it's mainly to do with just the way it runs, isn't it? The organization. It's a
well, I often say it's like an oil company. Okay, Shell or ExxonMobil or any of those companies. It's not that they're set out at the board meeting and say, let's do as badly as we can to humanity.
Yeah.
They said, oh, it's just a side effect that the world is dying. and that should be taken care of by somebody else. And Facebook does exactly the same thing. You know, they're making $165 million of profit every single day. So at their board meetings, or Mark meets with himself for the board meetings, by the way. It's not that he's sitting down and saying, I'm going to be very evil. He says, well, I'm making this much money, and how can I make more money? And if there's a side effect, then let other people worry about it. And that just is a completely irresponsible, unethical approach, in my view.
Let's talk about music, which and sound, not just music, but sound. I just written a blog recently about the fact that there's no option to post sound on Facebook, which has frustrated me since it began. There's no, when you do a post, there's all these like share a GIF, share an image, share a video, share this, share that, but there's no just record your voice thing, which I just thought was crazy. So I kind of look at Facebook's 17 or 18 years, whatever it is, as being this incredible, what is it? Is it 2.5 billion people worldwide using it now?
It's almost 3 billion now.
It's almost 3 billion. And that in all of that time, there's never been an option really to just share sound, which I just think sound is the most beautiful and individual. It's like, it's really individual. Every single person has a completely different voice. And I just thought, God, that's what a missed opportunity for almost 2 decades. How do you feel about that? Pardon?
Good point. I started in 1996 a company called Sonific, and what we did is we did soundtracks for the web. So we had a music player where you could, we called it Sonify. You could sonify your website. And it turns out that people were doing that, like yoga salons and those kind of things, But generally speaking, people don't want to hear stuff when they go to a web page that starts by itself, unless it's YouTube or so. They would expect that. But so the sound issue on the web is just now starting again. I'm convinced that very soon, because technology will be much more interactive, and not just on a web page or so, that we're going to have soundtracks for people's pages and messages as soon as it's becoming possible.
Yeah, I love that idea. It struck me as, I don't know, like you, probably kind of a passionate student of like the second half of the 20th century and its music culture. The Beatles onwards for me seems to be like the comfiest seat I've been in for most of my life, and it just, I can't believe that we've been in a silent technological communication system. It's so silent, even to the point where video, when you go through a feed and you scroll through and see videos, every single video is given subtitles. So there's no incentive. If you see a face talking, there's not a lot of incentive to press unmute. You can just sort of read the words. And I think many of us do. I know I have.
The technology is still not really good enough for that. We're going to see better technology for this. For example, web pages will essentially become your own personal magazine. And imagine that one day, well, this is not far away, already happening, is that I'm not using a browser for a web page or an app. I'm just going to say to the wall, let's talk to Tim Arnold, and up you come with the beauty of all your stuff and your video, and I can just be like Tom Cruise in Minority Report and grab your soundtrack and put it over here. And,
I thought you were about to say that. Right.
Yeah, and this is definitely happening. I think it's going to be fantastic. The music industry, let's face it, is in a coming up to a huge revival and boom phase. That as soon as we can get away from the monopolies of the record labels and the rights societies, and we can find a better way forward. The music industry is already booming now. It's streaming, right? And just wait until the good old gatekeepers are going to be replaced by self-serve technology. I think it's all going to be about building a brand. And I think the great thing about music is that music is going to be absolutely everywhere, and that opens up, for example, the fact that people are producing music for films now. Like everybody is making film music now, eh? Because there's so many more films there.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, and there's a lot of movement or a movement to fix streaming, which is being led by some really amazing people in the music sector in the UK, because of course the remuneration for artists, musicians, just any music creator is chaos. I mean, in the last year alone, I think Spotify did $13 billion in 1 month, but all the musicians are living on charity. You know, there are charities that have been funding musicians to stay alive and keep creating throughout the pandemic. So that, I hope that's going to change as well.
But you know, the problem with that is not necessarily Spotify. Spotify pays about 74% or even more, I think, and of their revenues to the rights holders, right? The problem is the completely broken music ecosystem. That if you are with a record label, you will never guaranteed make any money unless you go to the very top. I had many record contracts. I had book publishing agreements. It's the same story, right? And that is only the very, very cream reaches a certain point to where you can negotiate for better deals, or you can make up your own Todd Rundgren like internet ventures and those kind of things, right? But you know, the bottom line is it's the ecosystem that's broken, and the recruitment process and all that stuff, and everybody knows it. It's not, you know, being an artist and being a musician has always been difficult, you know, from the first get-go.
Yeah.
And now we have better tools, and I think the likes of Spotify could help us to fix it. But for example, the labels won't allow Spotify to sign up artists directly. Right? And why is that? Well, because they're cartels, right? You know what cartels do? If you don't do the right thing, they come and break down your house. Right?
Yeah. That was very much part of the DCMS hearing here in the UK. I think at the beginning of this year, it was very much the word cartels was used a lot.
This is not new. It's just, I mean, I would say from the 15 years or so that I worked in the music business, from 1995 to about 2010, it's the most dysfunctional industry that you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
It's even, I think even television and movie making is more functional in terms of all of the provisions for protection of income, and so is better than the music industry.
Yeah, I've not worked I've worked around the music industry for the last 15 years. Yeah, because of the kind of projects I like working on, I could get on and make them, or I could have a conversation with people in the music industry for many years.
Right, but I think the lesson we can draw from music, you know, just to close that chapter here, is that technology does not solve social, cultural, economic, human problems. It makes them worse. And technology of streaming and online music has made many problems of digital music worse. Because we haven't solved the underlying problem, which is the food chain of who does what and what kind of rights we have.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, that's very, very true. With data and data collection, and the idea that data is kind of being colonized in the same way that, you know, actual physical real earth and land used to be colonized. There's two extremes there, isn't there? There's one extreme which is fear and of I want to protect my data, and I don't want it to be, you know, somebody else to be in control of all my information. That's like one end. And then the other end of it is, well, everyone's always had ownership of our, you know, rights, and to a degree, and what's the big deal? You know, where do you stand on that? There's a lot of organizations talking about data at the moment. I'm interviewing a few people that have written a book about it on this show. What do you think about data collection and privacy?
Well, in the beginning of the internet, it was a pretty clear-cut deal. You know, we would share our data and have cookies in our browsers and all that kind of stuff in return for free content. And this is how it all got kicked off. but the technology was so bad to dredge up or use our data that it was almost useless, except for cookies for advertising, which worked well. Everything else didn't work well. But then all of a sudden, the processes were getting bigger, computing was getting smarter, artificial intelligence came in, and the cloud came up, and 4G and 5G. And before you know it, the little problem, which was the occasional abuse, became the standard. Right? So in my view, the problem is not that people ask for data. It is the fact that most companies are lying and abusing about how they use it. And basically because they can. Right? I mean, Facebook's spying capacity is probably equal, if not bigger, than that of the NSA. In fact, this is probably why they're collaborating heavily.
It's the NSA. Is that where Snowden worked?
Right, right. And
Yeah.
Snowden, that was 2013. It has shown us what is possible. So it is crucial that when we go forward, we go away from this old internet model of saying everything has to be free. In return, I give my data. My data is worth to Facebook and Google, Google, by the way, $47 a year is what Google makes off the user data in Western countries. $47. Right?
Wow.
So it's no wonder that the average Facebook employee makes $280,000 salary a year. Yeah? Because it's essentially a gold mine. And so what we have to do there is whatever worked in the beginning of the curve worked okay, and now we're at the takeoff point, it no longer works. It's a broken logic. So we need to make sure that we safeguard our identity, safeguard our digital rights, make sure that tracking doesn't get carried away. And the European Commission is doing that, various governments are doing that. But imagine this, right? Imagine when all of your healthcare data, your DNA goes in the cloud, right? Because without that happening, we can't be effective at healing and preventing, to put medicine in the cloud, right? Now imagine when all that stuff goes online, it's going to be 1,000x of what's already out there about you, right? So if we don't solve this problem of control and of standards and digital identity, we're screwed. I mean, and
That's
so
quite a
this is
frightening view of of the future.
No, I think it's good because the data can help us to solve so many problems, like environmental control. But we need somebody else in a private company making up whatever they are comfortable with, and that's like saying if you run a car company, you get to decide if you declare the diesel emissions or not, because you want to make 2 billion euros more, and it's fine to lie. And I mean, look, here's the thing, Facebook is very good at lying about these things, and they're very good at monetizing it. Every time they get a major penalty, their stock goes up.
Wow.
Right? So it's like, okay, so as long as people keep buying that stock, it's like buying oil company stock, it's destroying the world, but you're going to make money. And that has to end. We have to pull our money out from places that are destructive.
Is the tech or digital revolution something that you see that a little bit like human beings, we get to a certain age and there are some very serious growing pains? Do you think of it like that actually we're just in this bit where we're going to transition into something more functional, but it's going to hurt a bit and to quite a lot of us to get there?
Well, that's true. I mean, the way the internet was formed is not sustainable. The business model of the internet has been, ever since there was a business on the internet, has been tracking, surveillance, and manipulation. And that hasn't worked for a long time, but now it does, right? Because we're getting it to work, and so to change that's one thing about the business model of the internet. But clearly we're only at the very beginning, and we have to really ask this question: what do we want from all this technology? Not what it can do, because the answer is it can do anything.
Yeah.
And what do we really want? I mean, I like the sort of alcoholic, obsessive smoker drug header that says too much of a good thing is a very bad thing, right? And it's not the thing that itself is bad, whether you smoke or whatever you do. It's possibly not bad by itself, right? But when you do too much of it, obesity, 400 40 million people are in danger of dying from obesity. Right? There's more and more people are dying from obesity than hunger. Right? And that's the same problem with technology, like falling in love
It's
with an avatar.
oversaturation, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, in China they have this thing called Chow Eyes, which is a digital assistant that's built by Microsoft, but it's used by 650 million people. It's kids who pretend Chow Eyes to be their best friend. Right? And I would say, well, that's no longer really a game. That is seriously contorting people's reality.
And I think that's the part that when something's sold as a product or a feature, and it's beguiling and it's sort of enchanting in many ways. So when it happens in the real world, I mean, we get a wooden toy. We kind of get bored of it after a little while, but with technology, it's very hard to get bored of something, isn't it?
Well, look, I mean, this is really the fundamental question. I mean, right now, 10 years from now, you can't say we can become like a god, so to speak, if you want, like superhuman, right? Using technology. I can live to be 150 if I change my genome, which will be possible. I can connect my brain to the internet, which will be possible. If I'm very rich, I can do all of that, and I become, And so the question is that in principle a good idea? Or will that make us less human than now?
Yeah.
And what do we want? The question isn't what we can do. That question is closing, because sooner or later, you want to learn how to play an instrument, you can download the program, right? Minority Report.
I understand when you say that those things will be possible, and I think it's great. It's change and it's evolution of a sort. But I did work at Apple once as a sort of creative specialist in London, and for 6 months. And I know from working there that the rule of thumb with most organizations or companies or corporations that are peddling technologies, that they never release anything to human beings when it's properly ready. They release it before it's ready all the time. So the stuff that you're talking about, it's exciting, but what's not exciting is that it's always in the hands of companies that find out afterwards what it did to us that wasn't helpful a lot of the time.
True. I mean, but Apple makes a great example. Apple has in the last couple of years gone very heavily on pitching privacy as a major reason to buy Apple.
Yeah, I know.
And Apple is the only company that I would believe they actually want it.
Yeah.
You pay for privacy when you buy Apple. Basically.
Absolutely, yeah, they're very good in that regard. Yeah, I think I probably.
Tim Cook said at a conference that I was at 2 years ago, he said, technology can do great things, but it does not want to do great things. It doesn't want to do anything. And this is something we have to remember. Technology is a tool, and I can use a hammer to kill somebody, or I can build a house. And the same goes for 5G or for AI. And if we want to do anything with technology, it's us that have to set the rules.
Yeah.
And that is where we're at right now.
And do you think, from the perspective of the general public, that from your experience, because I know you give so many talks about this and you attend a lot of meetings about these subjects, do you get a sense that just ordinary people who don't, like me actually, I don't really know that much about tech and how it works, that we're in a good state of mind to carry this responsibly towards a future, and safely, not responsibly? What impression do you get, or do you feel sometimes that everyone's kind of lost their minds?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting there, but of course, in the end, the responsibility for guidelines and for policy on technology doesn't rest necessarily with you and me or with the average consumer. The average consumer says, I have to use Facebook because I meet my friends there, or I have to use Facebook because my music is there. And when I stopped using Facebook, my traffic went down 74% on my website.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? And so it can't be my responsibility to fix Facebook as a private citizen. This is a question of that's what we have governments for, right?
Yeah.
It is the role of government to protect the citizen from overzealous science, technology, and industry and commerce, and to create the balance. And that's the role of the government that we have.
Yeah.
And that is the role that we're going. Imagine, just imagine for a second. There is a genomic fix to aging, to longevity, and that there are lots of companies working on this. One of them is called Human Longevity Inc. in Palo Alto, California. Just the name should remind you of Blade Runner type scenarios. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
What's it
imagine
called?
if they are successful, right?
What was it called, Gerd? Sorry.
Human Longevity Inc. HLI. It's a part of Genentech now, which is owned by Roche, Swiss company. But imagine if they succeed in using CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing technology to interrupt the process of aging. And that would mean that a person that has $5 million can live to be 150, provided they don't have an accident or something. And you and me get to live to be 90. And then you would say, well, that's just a free market, right? No.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Right? It just isn't, because there is a difference between the free market saying my tires are more expensive than these tires, and fundamental human concerns.
Oh my God, it's so interesting. You said the word balance before, and I really feel that balance is, I don't know, it's what I'm looking for between analog and digital, I suppose. I'm, because of the world that I grew up in was completely analog until I got into my 20s. Can I just ask you, it's just so amazing hearing lots of new things I didn't know about, which I'm going to scrub through and listen back to these to find out. I thought there was already a Pandora's box that had opened. I think you've just ripped off the lid now. For you personally, I'm really interested in what are the organic, natural, analog activities that you partake in that enable you to spend so much of your attention on tech and digital?
Well, I think that everybody has to find their own path there. But for me, it has always been about nature and music, of course, and doing sort of human things. When you think about human things, the way that we're set up, we're not just data. We're just not electronic processes. We care about things like experiences. An experience can change your life. Listening to a song can change your life sometimes, right? And having an experience and engaging with others, right? In relationships, that's all kind of like what robots wouldn't know what to do with that, right? Because it's not, they're binary, right? They only have zeros and ones, and we are multinary. So what we need sometimes is the opposite. We need the opposite of machines, which means no input. Right? No input means going to the woods, right? Or just sitting down and just working on your song, or cooking a meal, or something that's completely inefficient. That a robot would call that inefficient, right?
Is inefficiency the thing that makes us human?
That is one of the things, all of the weird stuff about us. For example, we have mysteries, right? The stuff that we don't want people to know. That's completely the opposite of any machine-based system. Mystery is bad. We have serendipity. We have mistakes. We have deception. We have pretending. We have imagination. We have a whole bunch of things that are, and this is what we have to cultivate. If we don't cultivate that, we become machines. As I like to say, the biggest problem today is not that machines will take over. That could be a problem eventually, but is that we become too much like them. That is the ultimate thing that is happening today. We're becoming like the machines because we're getting lazy.
Yeah, I love that when you said imagination and serendipity, and it makes me think of dreams as well, of course. is parts of us that we can't quite understand where they come from and what they do. And you're right. I think it is the opposite, isn't it, of technology?
Well, I think the important thing for us is that we protect this. And that's why I always say the more that we connect with technology, the more we must protect what makes us human. And that means, for example, saying, you know what, I'm not taking in any more information now. I'm cutting the connection. I have to have the right to be offline. And so what we do, we go out for dinner, we leave the phones at home. We go out without the phone. We make a point of not bringing the phone in the bedroom because otherwise I'd be constantly fiddling with it. And I think at the point to where you can no longer exist without being connected to the network, that point is rapidly approaching, like virtuality, right? I mean, imagine if that actually works, Microsoft HoloLens or Oculus Rift, and you're a composer, you can compose, like Tom Cruise. Then you take this thing off and you meet your kids and your wife and you're like, oh God, it's so boring, because it's just one-dimensional then, right? You can only imagine where that is going to lead to.
Yeah. I remember the first time I tried an Oculus on, and I was trying to build a pyramid, I think, and yes, it's more to do with the feeling when you come back, isn't it? When I took it,
but right now it doesn't really work. Now this is kind of like when you use voice control today, like you speak to your computer or your television and you say, flip on hard talk, first episode, minute 24. It probably won't understand because you're mumbling or something, right?
Yeah.
But in a few years, you can speak to a machine like I speak to you now, and the machine will speak back to me in your voice, right?
If you want to speak to the machine.
And this is going to be possible. So we have to really think about how far we want to go with this, and if it's going to be all for what I call the good future, or let's say a good future financially is not the same than the good future as a human.
Yeah. Well, Gerd, I could talk to you for hours about all of this, and I've learned a lot, and it feels very balanced actually. What you've said, some of it terrifies me, and some of it excites me as well. So thank you so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Well, I'm talking about the stuff that causes people to.
Oh, you've cut out. Start again. Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think one thing I should like to add is that I kind of feel like we're heading towards a sort of human renaissance, because we are at the point where we say, okay, technology is great, but I'm missing something here. And this is what the COVID crisis has taught us. We can do anything we want online. We can meet thousands of new people, but what we're missing is a hug, something really simple. And so we're heading towards a human renaissance. So anybody in the creative business stands to profit from this trip back to human things and to humanity, and which is coming. As we are getting used to technology just as a simple tool, but not as the purpose of life. And so that is, I think, the future is going to be better than we think.
I think that's a lovely note to end on, and I'll just pick up on the magic word hug, which I'll give you when I see you finally, whether it's in London or Zurich. Gerd Leonhard, thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome. We'll see you down the road.
See you
Live long and prosper.
Yeah.